Iron Man 3 opened this summer. Did fan-friggin-tastic business.
Yes.
Made about $125 million in China.
Yeah, we're roughly around 125.
Right, which is, I think, more than any film has made in a year and a half or something like that.
Yeah, we're really proud of that effort because, well, one thing about China is everybody touts what they can get done there, and it's easy to use words to sort of say what you can do, but to actually accomplishing it is a lot different of a prospect. And I like to say that Iron Man 3 was as much of an act of diplomacy as it was as a movie or a piece of business. Since we announced Iron Man 3, we've noticed a big push to sort of curb straight imports from the United States in an effort to help grow their home industry.
So let's talk about some of the vagaries of trying to get your movie, a Hollywood movie released in China, because you really understand that process. It's just, it's so challenging in the sense that there's only, I believe now, 35 films, Western films a year.
Yeah, 34.
I think it's 24, and then they added another 10, but they all have to be 3D. I believe, right?
Well, it's a fluid sort of number. I mean, there's obviously a lot of fluidity in whether it's going to be 10 3D movies, maybe there's some animation movies in there, etc. But that's sort of the general ballpark.
And it's like the Chinese are very sensitive to not letting Hollywood films be too successful. Like they don't want it's a balancing act. So you brought up The Croods, right? So that was an interesting case because The Croods was successful.
Let me just backtrack really quick. I don't think it's necessarily that they don't want U.S. movies to be successful.
I said too successful.
Too successful. But I think it goes back to that last panel that you just had. One of them mentioned that it's a little bit of a give and take relationship. If you're just taking from them, essentially saying, hey, we have the best movie in the world, we're the best studio, we're from the USA, you better take this because that's what your consumer wants. That's not necessarily the way they like to have you handle that. At the time when we announced Iron Man 3, we had imports from the United States completely demolishing the local movies from China. I mean, I think at one time we were probably 80 cents on the dollar of every box office dollar that was coming in were coming from U.S. movies. So I sort of think if the same thing was happening with an industry we were developing here in the United States, we'd have a little bit of a pride issue, we'd have a little bit of an ego issue, but then on top of it, we'd be saying, well, wait a minute, we're the government that's supposed to do what's best for our people here in the United States. We need to figure out how to curb a little bit of what China's bringing into this market and give a little extra push to our own stuff. Has anybody seen Looper in here?
Everybody, okay.
Okay, that was a real success. I think, we joke with Rian Johnson that if we could have quick converted it into 3D, we would have made a lot more. But of course, with a movie like that and an auteur like Rian, you want to respect the filmmaker and say, let's show it the way you want to do it. And I think the sophisticated moviegoer in China really loved it. And when you look at that script, originally, the future in that movie was going to take place in France. When we approached Endgame and the filmmakers on the script, we said, hey, what about in the future he moves to China and he marries a Chinese woman? And they were like, well, does that make sense and all that? And we were sort of joking around. We said, well, no offense to anybody French in here, but we sort of said, well, the future of the world is sort of moving towards that side of Earth rather than the European side of Earth. So it does sort of make sense for him to go to where things are going to be in the future. And they're like, oh yeah, that's sort of interesting. That's right. You look at Twilight, we said, when we market this movie, we're not going to market it as a vampire movie. We're not going to market the violence. We're not going to market anything of the undead, of the spirit world, any of that vampire kind of stuff. What we are going to do is take a movie that worked really well in the past, which was Titanic, the original, which aired there, which showed there years ago.
Leo and
then the reboot made 150 million, which is incredible. But
you mean the 3D re-release? Yeah.
The 3D re-release.
Yeah, unbelievable. Yeah.
So we said, look, this is really a Romeo and Juliet romance. Think Titanic, think Romeo and Juliet. That's what Twilight is. And that's the way we're going to reach consumers. That's the way we're going to market this product. And when you actually see the movie, there's really not that much vampire mythology in the movie. I mean, you know, if there was, I think guys would love those movies a lot more. And somebody from, you know, there's 7 members of the standing party right now, the Politburo, so it's been condensed. Back then there were 9. But if one of them says, hey, I was driving by the theater and I saw this movie Twilight, I heard that was a vampire movie, why is it in our theaters? They can easily say, yes, there's a mythology in there of vampires, but what's the way it's being portrayed to the consumer, and the reason why the consumer is going to see the movie is because it's a la that, remember the Titanic that was in here and everybody loved that?
Oh, that's
It's
fun.
got that Romeo and Juliet romance, the kind of thing that really appeals to women, all that kind of stuff.